welcome to the Kelly Roach Show, a place for no fluff, easy to implement, 20-minute or less business and leadership lessons to help you build a sustainable business that scales. Let's get started. Okay, welcome back to the Kelly Roach Show. Super pumped to have with me here today, Nick Viall. Nick, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you, Kelly. Thanks for having me.
All right. Happy to have you here. So guys, for anyone that is not familiar with Nick, he was the guy that made his debut on the 21st season of ABC's The Bachelor. But since then, he's been on Dancing with the Stars, all sorts of other TV appearances. Most exciting to me having you on the show today, Nick, is the work that you've done with your podcast, which was named one of the People's Choice shows for 2020. I would love to hear more about what you're doing with the show and how you've achieved that. It's in the top 10 podcasts for 2019, which is super exciting. And then, of course, we got to make sure we talk about the book, right? We got to talk about the book, right? So don't text your ex happy birthday and other advice on love, sex, and dating. So that's going to be some fun. Nick, I'm so excited to have you here. It's great to have you.
Yeah, excited to be here.
So what propelled you to get yourself on The Bachelor? Let's talk just about that for a quick moment. And then let's really fast forward and talk about what you're up to today with your essential oils company, with the book, with the podcast, all of that.
Yeah. It was this kind of fortuitous thing. I was in sales at the time. And my buddy's wife was a big fan of the show. And I teased her for watching it. And to spite me, she signed me up for the show. Oh my
gosh.
The rest is history, so to speak. That's how I ended up on the franchise.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. And so doing that show, what were the best things that came out of that experience for you, Nick?
Well, I mean, looking back from where I sit here today, I mean, everything I'm doing, I can link back to, the opportunity that was afforded me from going on The Bachelor. A lot had to happen between then and now in terms of, as I always say, to my peers or, people who might ask me for advice who come on the show, I was fortunate enough that I went on the show in my early 30s. So I had some business acumen. I was in corporate America for a while, and I just try to think to myself, what does this experience give me? And, what I remind myself first, and what I remind my peers if they ever ask, is that going on a reality TV show like The Bachelor, it gives you incredible access, but it gives you no credibility. And so I really thought about that for a long time. And, access is an important part of being successful, certainly in business, getting in the right doors, talking to the right people. Credibility is also really important too. But I took advantage of what I was given, the access, and recognized that, I didn't ever want to be the reality TV quote unquote star that acted like he had arrived, so to speak. I knew that I could get into doors with executives, so to speak, who were just fans of the show.
Yeah.
And once I got in the door, it was up to me to, show them that I was either someone they could work with or someone they wanted to help. That was the biggest thing too, is this, if I got in the door to like answer people's questions about the show or behind the scenes and things like that, they always afforded me the opportunity to ask what I was working on and things like that. And that was the opportunity for me to talk about, just the hard work I've been putting in and classes I've been taking. Instead of asking for any favors, it was more advice. What could I do to work harder? What could I do to, advance my goals and things like that, and so I was just asking for guidance rather than favors and things like that. And that built a lot of currency with people. And that helped build that credibility. And then again, focusing on what I wanted to do. It was a leap for me to try to be the guy who was positioned as like an unlucky in love person. And then I decided, what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and talk relationship advice as a white man to an audience that has primarily women. And so I had that's had its challenges. It still has its challenges. I didn't approach it I just approach it as a guy who's had his own struggles in relationships and datings. And regardless of my gender, I wanted to speak to some of the struggles I had and the ways that I figured out how to, make my problems feel less unmanageable and
Yeah.
and things like that. And it's taken some time. I had to stay with it. I had to face criticisms and things like that. I had to face doubters and things like that. But I've stuck with it, and fortunately, it's been a great ride. So yeah, I owe a lot to the platform and the access the Bachelor franchise has given me, because everything I'm doing now can be taken back to that.
I always think it's interesting because, you know, there's a lot of people that roll through these shows, right? And, you know, there are people that use that opportunity for access to then build a platform, and they go do really interesting, you know, smart things with it. And then there's people that just kind of come and go, they do the experience, and then nothing ever really comes of it. So kudos to you for, you know, making the most of it and getting a plan. So when you got off the show, did you ever go back and get a job? Did you move directly into entrepreneurship? Like what happened from there?
Well, I was on the show a few times. For those of you who don't watch the show, but the first time I was on the show, I worked for a company called Salesforce at the time, and so you know, thanks to them, they were very supportive of me taking a leave of absence and things like that. And so when I first went on, I was like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. And they're like, well, how long are you going to be gone? I was like, I don't know, like a day, 9 weeks, you know, I don't know, you know, and I ended up being gone for 9 weeks. And so when I got done, I was really grateful for their understanding. So I went right back to work, and which was not really a smart idea mentally, but for the first year, I just went back to work. I went back into selling software, and then I went back on the show. And from that point on, Salesforce once again was very understanding and very supportive, but there was a different kind of conversation with them, which is, we love you, we support you. If you ever want to come back, great, but don't come back until you never want to leave again. And I thought that was a very fair ask. And so instead of going back, I took some risks, and I kept in touch, and I never came back after that. I moved out to LA. I started getting into entertainment and just trying to feeling things out. And what did I like? What was I good at? What did I enjoy? What was I passionate about? And it took a couple years to really find my groove. And it wasn't until 2019 that I started the Viall Files, and, you know, kind of started with just an idea. And I, you know, at that point, it was really important. You know, I negotiated a deal that was, you know, it was based off a percentage split. I didn't get any upfront money. I didn't get any guaranteed. What was important to me is that I owned my show. So I owned my intellectual property. And at that point, it was kind of easy to negotiate because that property was worth nothing. And I negotiated a heavy split in my favor, which was a heavy percentage of 0. And so, but I'm a big believer in just betting on yourself. If you're willing to do the work, if you're willing to do things the right way, what's that outcome look like? And that's just been my mentality. And that's really paid off, because thankfully the show's had success. It's continued to grow ever since it started. You know, we went from 1 show a week to 3 shows a week. We've done as many as 6 million downloads in a month. You know, we've obviously been recognized for various accolades and things like that. And you know, it's been a real blessing and something I'm really grateful for. I went from, you know, walking the streets and people saying, oh, you're the guy from The Bachelor, to now people saying, oh, I love your podcast. And that's a really rewarding feeling to have created something that's mine. And again, certainly I owe a lot to my opportunity on The Bachelor and the platform they gave me, but that's been pretty cool.
No, that's amazing. And so are you, like, talk to me a little bit about your various ventures, right? So you're doing the podcast, you're doing the essential oils company. Like, what is your primary focus now?
Primarily, the Viall Files takes up a lot of my time. I started Natural Habits with my sister, Maria, who's a holistic nutritionist. And that's been, you know, great and fun. You know, we're a small operation, and we've had some nice successes. You know, the pandemic, unfortunately, like we had to kind of manage our time, and, you know, we still have it. It's still great. It's nice when you have an e-commerce business. It kind of almost runs itself. But thankfully, you know, it's one of those good problems to have. You know, like you have some success in a few spaces, and you have to prioritize your time. And the Viall Files really takes up a lot of my time. And right now, we're just kind of focused on growing and trying different formats. not necessarily trying different formats, but figuring out ways to expand the show, right? And grow the audience. For example, like I said, my audience is primarily women, but I want to continue to figure out how to grow that male audience. I want to continue to figure out how to, tap into, I know there's a lot of young men, a lot of men in general, who struggle with relationship dynamics, and they struggle in their feelings, and they don't really have safe places to go and talk about that. And so how do I figure out how to connect with them? So those are always things I'm working on. That takes up a lot of my time, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So as far as your growth strategy for the show, like what would you say? Because you have a lot of podcasters that are tuning in and listening to this show today. And obviously, podcasting is one of the most powerful business drivers if you can lock into a great growth strategy, with a great connect back to, your products and services. What have been the top things for you that you feel have made the most powerful impact on the growth of the podcast?
I think consistency is one. I mean, when it comes to podcasts, the barrier to entry is so incredibly easy. You just walk into a Target or a Walmart or a Best Buy or Amazon, buy some relatively inexpensive equipment and start talking. And the hard, I think the stat is most podcasts don't make it past like episode 8 or something like that. It might even be lower now. Because everyone's, gone to a bar with their buddy or their girlfriends at night and had a conversation over a few drinks and laughed and be like, you know what, this would be a great podcast. And the truth is that episode probably was wonderful. But when you get to episode 3 or 4, it's kind of like, well, what do we talk about now? And so it's having that consistency. You want to be able to talk about something you're truly passionate about. Like it can't just be one interesting conversation. It's got to be what's the core. I knew I enjoyed relationship dynamics. I knew I was the friend who in a friend group that people would go to, and I could give kind of honest advice in a way that like would resonate with people. And I was willing to say that, part of it is being willing to put your voice out there, consistency, willingness to face some criticism, stay true to what you want. I'm not a shock jock by any means like that. I don't say things to get a reaction. But I do try to be honest with my points of view. I try to be mindful of how my words impact other people. So it's all of that, but consistency is the biggest thing is just constantly putting out things on a regular basis, and knowing and setting an expectation of what your audience can come to expect to listen to. And other driving factors, I always try to have a relationship with your audience too. Try to make them feel engaged, whether it's with questions that you ask or topics that you discuss. And things like that, because at the end of the day, like, for example, one of my shows, people call in and they will share their stories. They'll come and Nick, I have this dating situation or this family situation. And what I'll always hear is, we want to find stories that relate to everyone. So even if someone doesn't call in, the person listening saying, I had a very similar situation, or I'm going through that right now, and this is really helpful. So it's just trying to find ways to connect with your audience and have conversations. Like, I don't make a habit of just reading reviews because you can handcuff you creatively, but it's good to check in with your audience. If you have a chance to like meet someone who listens to your show or, and say, hey, well, what do you like about the show? What's the thing how did you find the show? What is your favorite thing about it? Stuff like that. You can get a lot of good information. So those are the things I try to focus on. Yeah,
no, it makes sense. I mean, people crave connection. And staying connected to your audience is one of the easiest ways to continually produce content that they're actually excited to consume because it's relevant, it's meaningful, it's timely. They feel a sense of connection to it. So, I mean, it all makes sense. Talk to me about the book. What do people get out of the book? What inspired the book? Like, let's talk about the book a little bit here.
Yeah, the book, again, it's called Don't Text Your Ex Happy Birthday. It's kind of an extension of what I'm doing with my show, the Viall Files. Again, it's mostly relationship and dating dynamics. And again, I just kind of started being the guy who would kind of give this kind of snarky but empathetic, kind of very direct advice to anyone who listened. And I had this series of Q&As. Again, talking about consistency, I started this thing on my social media called Questions with Nick, which is ultimately what started the podcast. It's really been the catalyst for everything. And people would start, that Q&A, like ask me anything. So I was just like, well, I want to train my audience I want to see if they respond to my relationship advice. So I'd only answered relationship questions. And then I kind of trained my audience. Now that's all they ask, right?
Right.
but I had some success, and then I just started doing it, and I've been doing it every Sunday for about 4 years now, give or take, maybe Easter.
Yeah.
And again, that consistency. And so I had all these accumulated, and ultimately I thought, well, maybe there's a coffee table book idea here, but thankfully to my publisher, they encouraged me to write a book. And again, it's just about relationships and dating. It's really just about, a more of a mindset too, because if you're not someone who struggled with dating or things like that, I'm someone in my interpersonal relationship, specifically in my love life, that, I wasn't really mindful of things like my ego. I would chase things like validation. I would ask myself the wrong questions when I was disappointed, with the outcomes of any situation. And I have found that, listen, like, people can disappoint us. That's a reality of life, but we can't control what they do, but we can control what we do. And if we can focus on any one given situation and try to reframe our perspective of a situation, if we can reframe how we perceive something, it doesn't mean we won't immediately stop being disappointed, but it means that we might be able to see a situation a little bit differently. We might feel a little bit more empowered. We might feel more in control of our decisions. That's ultimately what the book is about, embedded with like some, real world dating, like do's and don'ts and things like that. Whether you're out there dating and braving the real world, hookup culture, maybe you're trying to get over someone that's you're struggling with. These are all things I struggle with. These are all things I learned the hard way. And I just kind of want to put it into a fun kind of, manual for, kind of dating and relationship for dummies. It's meant to be fun. It's not very technical or anything like that. Again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not an expert. I'm just someone who's had a lot of experience, many of which wasn't like enjoyable experiences, but I've learned a lot along the way, and I wanted to share that with my audience.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. And it sounds fun just talking about it. So, great work. I want to be cognizant of your time. So, first of all, we have a whole ton of entrepreneurs tuning in, listening into this show today, learning from you. What would be just some of the biggest lessons learned for you that you would want to share with those that are listening to the show today?
I'm sure people probably have heard this before, but just make sure you're investing in yourself and in your business too. And play the long game. I think especially nowadays, and people I talk to, that's always been a thing. I think with entrepreneurs, you want to have that immediate success. You want to be validated quickly and know what you're doing, but you really have to have a long-term plan, and you really have to stay focused and grind it out. I learned this in my sales day: shavings make a pile, and I apply that mentality to kind of everything I do. And you really, just small successes every day. When you have some bumps in the road, try to learn from it, stay consistent. Again, reinvesting in yourself, whether it's with your time or just your or money, both in the business, like you really have to try to grow. And to do that, you have to make some personal sacrifices. Again, this is nothing new. I'm sure all the entrepreneurs out there, I've heard stuff like this, but I'm just here to reinforce it because it is really the case. And if you can do that, I think the sky is the limit, because I think there's a lot of people out there who aren't willing to do that. They aren't willing to, have small successes every day over a long period of time. A lot of people want to find that immediate win. Yeah. And, like I said, a lot of people start a podcast and then quit because they didn't have that like fortitude to stick with it and just, build a little bit every day and have a small goal of like, just get to that next episode, try to keep growing it, try to keep reaching new people. And over time, I'm about to record my 500th episode and since 2019. And, I just try to get to number 8, and then I try to get to number 9, and things like that. And so, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I love it. And it's funny because no, it's not new, but it is the most essential thing that determines success. We're at almost episode 900 of this show, and, it's been such a huge catalyst for the brand. And the thing about podcasting, which is kind of a microcosm of business overall, is that podcasting is not this like spontaneous combustion of you release a show and all of a sudden magical, things happen. Yeah. It's those small drips over time that build this amazing brand and this connection and impact and influence. So I think the things that you're reinforcing are absolutely huge. They're seemingly small, but unfortunately, in this culture and in the world of social media, they're just not evident to most people. So really good advice there.
And you don't know when people are going to discover you too. I have people every day who will discover my show again, we're almost 500 episodes deep, and they'll go back and be like, oh, I just binged all your, things like that. Not all of my episodes are kind of, some of them like will recap, certain shows, and they don't like stand the test of time. But there's other shows like, again, our advice section that if we recorded 3 years ago, it's still relevant to today. And so, put good content out there, put good work out there. And whenever people discover you, that will be when they get to enjoy you and go back and then they'll advocate to their friends for you and things like that. So just focus on putting out good work and don't get discouraged if people don't recognize that good work immediately. It'll find its way to the right people if it's good.
It's such great advice. Absolutely. Love it, Nick Viall. Where can people follow up? Where can they get in touch? Where do you want them to follow along with the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in any type of relationship dynamics, we talk a lot of pop culture stuff. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, check out the Viall Files, my podcast. Don't Text Your Ex Happy Birthday is available anywhere you get books. There's an audio book. If you're dyslexic like me, you go to viallfiles.com, and on my socials, it's Nick Viall on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter.
Awesome. Absolutely love it. Huge congrats on all the success and all the success still to come. I know you're on a mission and you're making a big impact with your work. Excited to see it all unfold. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much, Kelly. I appreciate you having me.